My stepmom asked me and my friend to do this with her. Hello, I'm Andrew. I'm 26 years old. I currently live with my mom and dad in the suburbs of New York City. My stepmother, Shirley, is now 59 years old, but time seems to have forgotten her. She still looks very young and has a slim physique. If anyone had met her for the first time, they would have mistakenly guessed her real age. Everything was going well until one day, my father had to go on a business trip for a few weeks, leaving me alone with my stepmother, and then whatever comes will come. It was just another typical Saturday evening. My best friend Anthony had stopped by my home, as he often did, to hang out. We were sitting in the living room, chatting and cracking jokes, when my stepmom Shirley came downstairs. In middle age, Shirley had an undeniable presence, the kind that naturally drew attention. I hadn't given it much thought before, but lately, something seemed to have changed. Her style, her demeanor, it all seemed deliberate, as if she fully understood the kind of attention she could command. Anthony had noticed, too. I could see it in the way his eyes tracked her every movement around the house. He'd looked at me occasionally, but I remained silent. Even though we both felt it, we didn't discuss it. I remembered that brief time was really a fiery night between the three of us. But before we continue, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel, Love 30K Stories. Thanks a bunch for your support. That evening, Shirley draped herself in a loosely tied silk robe, unveiling just enough to be impossible to ignore. She entered the room with 2 glasses of wine in hand, flashing a smile that made my heart stumble. "You guys seem to be enjoying yourselves," she said, offering us the glasses. "Mind if I join?" I exchanged a glance with Anthony, who looked just as uneasy as I felt, but neither of us refused. Shirley settled herself between us on the couch, casually crossing her legs as the hem of her robe shifted upward just slightly. I attempted to keep my focus on the TV, but the growing strain in the room was impossible to ignore. Anthony's eyes kept darting toward her, and it was clear Shirley was aware of the attention, a subtle smile hinting at her enjoyment. The silence stretched on, thick and awkward, until Shirley leaned forward, her voice soft and deliberate. "I've noticed the way you two look at me sometimes," she said, her gaze shifting between us with quiet confidence. My breath caught, and for a moment it felt like time had stopped. Anthony and I exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of unspoken thoughts hanging heavy in the air, but neither of us could find the words to respond. Shirley smiled, her hand lightly brushing against my leg before gliding over to Anthony's. "Relax," she murmured. "I don't take offense. Actually, I've been thinking about it too." My throat became parched while Anthony's cheeks flushed, his expression a mix of bewilderment and intrigue. Shirley's hand lingered on his thigh, her fingers tracing delicate circles as if testing boundaries. And it was working. "I realize I'm older," she said softly, her tone laced with allure, "but that doesn't mean I don't have my own desires, and I've noticed the interest you both seem to share." Her gaze shifted between Anthony and me, her smile warm yet provocative, while her hand crept higher on Anthony's leg. My thoughts raced, struggling to make sense of the moment. She was my stepmother, yet the intensity of her look and the way her touch sent shivers through me made it impossible to ignore. Anthony moved uneasily, though he didn't push her hand away. Shirley's eyes gleamed with satisfaction as she leaned in closer, her breath warm against my ear. "It's time to stop pretending," she murmured. "I can feel the strain between us. Why not see where it leads?" I was stunned by her words. My stepmother, Shirley, was suggesting something I had never consciously pictured. However, a small part of me had noticed the way she carried herself, her smile, the lingering touches. She had been toying with us for weeks, and now it was all coming to a breaking point. Before I could react, Shirley shifted her attention to Anthony, her fingers trailing lightly up his arm. "What about you, Anthony?" she asked, her voice sultry and inviting. Anthony's breath caught, his wide eyes betraying a mix of astonishment and yearning. He glanced at me, as though seeking approval, but I was at a loss for words. My heart raced in my chest, my mind shouting that this was a mistake, but my body refused to listen. Her metaphors were beautiful. I don't know," Anthony stuttered, his voice trembling. Shirley gave a sly smile, leaning closer to him, her lips mere inches from his ear. "Just relax," she murmured, her hand gliding up his chest, her fingers toying with the edge of his shirt. "We're all grown-ups here. Let's just savor this moment." Anthony, my closest friend, swallowed hard, his eyes darting nervously between Shirley and me. He was clearly conflicted, but the allure was undeniable. Shirley leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to his neck, her lips barely grazing his skin. A quiet gasp escaped him, and I could see how his body reacted to her touch. He wasn't going to resist this, and neither was I. Shirley pulled back slightly, her gaze smoldering as it shifted to me. "And you?" she asked, her hand now resting lightly on my thigh. "I know this has crossed your mind too." I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. My thoughts were a chaotic storm of emotions. But then Shirley leaned in, her lips brushing against mine, gentle and unhurried at first. It started as a hesitant kiss, but when I didn't resist, she intensified it, her hand moving up my thigh while the other reached for Anthony's leg. I returned the kiss, my heart pounding and my thoughts urging me to stop, yet I was powerless. Her lips were gentle and warm, and the way she kissed me made the world disappear. Right and wrong no longer mattered. All I could sense was Shirley's body against mine and the electric sensation of her touch. Shirley leaned back slightly, her eyes locking with mine. "Good boy," she murmured, before shifting her attention to Anthony. She kissed him next, this time with greater confidence, her hand sliding up his chest. I couldn't look away as she deepened the kiss, her body pressing into his. My heart was pounding, and the heat in the room was palpable. Shirley was no longer holding anything back, and neither were we. She moved fluidly between us, her hands exploring our bodies, her lips alternating between Anthony and me. The stress had reached its peak, and there was no stopping now. Shirley's hands roamed freely, gliding over my chest, tracing Anthony's back, drawing us closer, and ushering us into an uncharted, forbidden realm. Her touch was electric, sending surges of pleasure through me, and judging by Anthony's uneven breaths, he felt it too. Time seemed to blur as we were swept up in a storm of kisses, caresses, and whispered sighs. Shirley took the lead, her hands and lips sparking a fire within me I never knew existed. This woman, my stepmom, who had been a part of my life for so long, had suddenly become the focal point of my world. Nothing else mattered but her. At one moment, Shirley's fingers touched my chest, gently urging me backward. I reclined on the couch, my breaths shallow and rapid as she climbed atop me. Her robe had slipped open slightly, exposing more of her figure, and the sight sent my heartbeat racing. Leaning down, Shirley kissed me deeply, her hands gliding up my arms as she pressed herself firmly against me. Beside us, Anthony watched intently, his gaze smoldering with lust. Turning toward him, Shirley extended her hand, drawing him closer. She kissed him again, her body still pressed against mine, the warmth of her presence enveloping me. We were caught up in the moment, the three of us intertwined, our breaths mixing, our bodies moving in perfect harmony. When Shirley kissed Anthony, her hands wandered across my chest, her fingers drawing delicate patterns that sent chills through me. I shut my eyes, surrendering to the sensation of her touch, the rhythm of her breathing, and the way her body pressed against mine. Time seemed to blur as the intensity between us grew. Shirley's kisses turned more fervent, her touch more insistent, and I could feel the passion among us reaching its crescendo. Anthony was right there with us, his hands tracing over Shirley's body, his lips brushing against her neck and shoulders. Eventually, Shirley drew back, breathing heavily. She glanced at both of us, her eyes gleaming with a deep, unfamiliar satisfaction. "You boys did well," she murmured, her voice barely audible. I couldn't find the words to respond. My mind still reeled from everything that had just happened. I looked over at Anthony, who seemed just as stunned. We had crossed a boundary that could never be undone, and there was no turning back. Shirley gave a knowing smile before leaning in for one last, lingering, tender kiss. "I think we all needed that," she remarked, her tone brimming with satisfaction. Rising to her feet, she loosely tied her robe around her waist once more and left the room without another word. Anthony and I remained seated, frozen in stunned silence as we struggled to comprehend everything that had just unfolded. After a long stretch of quiet, Anthony finally broke it, his voice unsteady. "What just occurred?" I shook my head, still grappling with disbelief. "I have no idea, man. No idea." We lingered there a while longer, the gravity of what had occurred settling heavily over us. "I think we all needed that," she remarked, her tone brimming with satisfaction. Rising to her feet, she loosely tied her robe around her waist once more and left the room without another word. Anthony and I remained seated, frozen in stunned silence as we struggled to comprehend everything that had just unfolded. After a long stretch of quiet, Anthony finally broke it, his voice unsteady. "What just occurred?" I shook my head, still grappling with disbelief. "I have no idea, man. No idea." We lingered there a while longer, the gravity of what had occurred settling heavily over us. "Alice?" We had always known Shirley was captivating, even irresistible, but none of us could have foreseen how far things would spiral tonight. Now that it was all said and done, I couldn't stop questioning what this meant. For me and Anthony, for me and Shirley. We had ventured into uncharted territory, a place we could never retreat from, and the repercussions were a mystery to me. When Anthony finally got up to leave, his face was a strange blend of confusion and exhilaration. "Do you think this will happen again?" he asked. I didn't have an answer. All I could do was shrug, my thoughts still tangled from the chaos of the evening. Anthony lingered for a moment, waiting for me to respond, but I stayed quiet. Eventually, he gave me a slight nod and moved toward the door. As he opened it, he hesitated and cast a glance back over his shoulder. "Let me know if anything occurs, okay?" I nodded, still unsure of how to respond. "Yeah, of course." As the door clicked shut behind him, I was left alone, the weight of everything that had unfolded pressing down on me. The house was silent once more, almost unbearably so. My heart was still racing, and the ghost of Shirley's touch lingered. Her lips, her warmth. It felt unreal, as though I had just stepped out of a dream, yet it was all undeniably real. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, staring at the empty room, my thoughts spiraling endlessly. What did it all mean? How could we possibly return to normal after this? And perhaps the most pressing question, did I even want to? The following morning, I woke up feeling as though I hadn't slept a wink. My head swirled with everything that had unfolded the previous night. Shirley was still upstairs in the house, and I had no clue how to face her. My mind kept replaying the moments, the kisses, the touches, the way her body felt against mine. It all felt distant, yet it had only happened mere hours ago. I forced myself out of bed, uncertain of what awaited me. As I descended the stairs, the rich aroma of coffee greeted me, and there she was, Shirley, standing in the kitchen. She wore a plain t-shirt and jeans, effortlessly casual, as though nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. When her eyes met mine, a gentle smile curved her lips. "Good morning," she said nonchalantly, as if it were just another typical day. Morning," I muttered, unsure of how to behave around her now. My thoughts flickered back to the events of the previous night, but Shirley appeared completely unfazed. She moved about the kitchen, preparing breakfast as though everything were perfectly normal. I lingered there awkwardly, silently observing her. I couldn't handle the tension any longer. "About last night," I began, but my words faltered, unsure how to proceed. Shirley turned toward me, her expression softening with a knowing smile. "I thought you might bring that up," she said, leaning casually against the counter. "There's no need to stress over it." "How can I not?" I blurted out. "What happened was, well, it was, I stammered, but Shirley raised a hand, cutting me off mid-sentence. "I get it. It was surprising," she said calmly. "But it doesn't have to be complicated. We're adults. We made a choice." She paused, her voice trailing off, as her head tilted slightly, her eyes meeting mine. "We can leave it at that, or," she added, her tone shifting, "we can see where it goes." My heart skipped a beat. Whatever I had expected her to say, it wasn't that. Shirley didn't seem to view this as a mistake or something irreversible. She wasn't acting like we had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. Instead, she appeared calm and composed, as if she had considered everything carefully and was now offering me a choice. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice quieter, uncertain of what answer I truly wanted. Shirley stepped closer, her movements slow and intentional. "I mean, if you're interested, if Anthony's interested, we don't have to stop here," she said, her hand resting gently on my arm. The same warmth I had felt the night before surged through me again. "There's no need for things to be awkward, unless you choose to make them that way." I swallowed hard, trying to process her words. Was this really an option? Could this continue? And if it did, what would it mean for all of us? Before I could respond, the buzz of my phone shattered the moment. I glanced down at my phone to see a text from Anthony. "Hey man, what's going on?" Shirley noticed the message too, and a faint smile played at the corners of her lips. "Looks like Anthony's curious," she said softly. "Maybe he's wondering if last night was just a one-time thing." I stared at the screen, my thoughts tangled. Part of me wanted to reply that it was over, that last night was a mistake fueled by too much wine and a lapse in judgment. But another part of me, the part that still felt the lingering warmth of Shirley's touch, her kiss, the way she made me feel, wasn't so sure. Without giving it much thought, I typed back, "You free later? We should talk." Anthony came over that afternoon, and the moment he stepped inside, I could sense his unease. He avoided looking directly at me, his eyes scanning the room as if expecting Shirley to appear at any moment. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice low and uncertain. "So, what the hell happened last night?" "Huh?" I said. I leaned back on the couch, searching for the right words. "I don't know, man. It just happened." Anthony sat across from me, shaking his head, his confusion mirroring my own. I tasted things I hadn't felt in a long time. "Yeah, but that was your stepmom and we were both involved," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, still clearly attempting to process everything. I don't know what to think about it. I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Should I mention the conversation I had with Shirley earlier, where she hinted that we could continue whatever this was? Before I could make up my mind, Shirley walked into the room, her presence instantly commanding attention. She glanced at Anthony, then at me, and smiled warmly. "Hey, Anthony," she greeted him softly, her voice smooth and composed. "I was hoping we could talk." Anthony's eyes widened slightly as he looked at me, clearly uncertain about what was coming next. Shirley sat down beside me, her hand lightly brushing against my knee before she turned her focus to Anthony. "I know last night was unexpected," she began, her tone calm and measured. "But I wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. I don't want things to feel awkward between us. What happened last night doesn't have to be a one-time thing, but only if it's something you both genuinely want." Anthony blinked, visibly surprised by her directness. He gazed at me, his eyes filled with confusion. Yet, beneath that, I caught a glimpse of something more. A spark of curiosity, of longing. The very emotions I had been grappling with all day. Shirley's voice broke the silence, soft yet resolute. "I'm not asking for a commitment. This doesn't have to be complicated. I'm offering you both something new, something thrilling, but only if you're both okay with it." A heavy silence followed as Anthony and I exchanged looks, trying to make sense of Shirley's proposal. The atmosphere was thick with strain, the kind that made my heart pound and my thoughts whirl. At last, Anthony broke the silence, his voice trembling just above a whisper. "And if we agree, what happens next?" he asked. Shirley's smile grew just a little wider. "Then we see where it takes us," she replied softly. "No expectations, no strings, just us." The air in the room buzzed with tightness as her words settled over us. This was real, she meant it, and now the decision rested with us. Anthony turned to me again, his eyes searching mine for a clue, a hint of what I was feeling. And in that instant, I knew I didn't want to refuse. The part of me that had been resisting this, the part afraid of what it all meant, was losing ground to the side that craved more. I nodded slowly, my heart pounding. "I'm in," I said quietly, my voice steadied despite the adrenaline surging through me. Anthony paused for a moment, uncertainty flickering in his eyes, but then he nodded as well. "Yeah," he said firmly. "I'm in." Shirley had a satisfied smile. She rose to her feet and stepped toward Anthony, her hand gently resting on his arm. "Good," she murmured. "Let's not waste another moment." She leaned in, her lips brushing his in a gentle, lingering kiss before she pulled back. "Everything." Afterward, turning to me, her eyes glimmering with promise, she bent down and kissed me as well, the same tender, lingering kiss that sent a shiver coursing through me. As Shirley withdrew, she gave us both a smile, her gaze burning with the same intensity we'd seen the night before. She said in a low voice, "Now let's pick up where we left off." The remainder of the afternoon faded into a vibrant blur of sensations, intimate kisses, tender touches, and the intense heat radiating from our bodies as we ventured into this new and tantalizing territory. Shirley took the lead, confidently guiding us both through this exploration, her touch sparking a deep fire within me that I had never realized was there. Each time I felt we might be crossing a line or venturing too far into the unknown, she would skillfully pull us back, offering reassurance with a soft kiss, a gentle whisper, or a caressing touch. Anthony and I found ourselves swept up in the same current, our bodies instinctively moving in harmony with Shirley's rhythm. The tension among us steadily escalated, building and building until it erupted in a moment of pure, undeniable passion. There was no room for hesitation or second-guessing. Just the three of us, completely immersed in the experience, lost in the intoxicating moment we had created together. We've reached the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you found our content engaging, a thumbs up and sharing it with your loved ones would be much appreciated. Make sure to subscribe to Love 30K Stories and turn on the notification bell for updates on our latest videos. Your support is everything to us. Until next time, take care and goodbye.